Hi, we're here with Maxi Bianco, local Hartlepool-based artist. Do you want to tell us a bit about your practice, Maxi?
Yes, maybe for the last decade, a little bit more, I've made a few sort of short films. I've made a feature documentary, which are often like sort of character-based documentaries, or sometimes I make sort of poem films, sort of essay form films with a writer called Michael Smith, who I often collaborate with, and I've made a couple of those have been made for Channel 4. I've made films for the BFI. I've collaborated with musicians like Andrew Weatherall and Mark Hand locally. I like doing that, and yeah, that's what I do.
Great. So how did you first get involved with the arts? What inspired you?
Well, I don't have a formal art or creative education. I sort of dropped out of A-levels photography and started working on the shipyards in the early 90s, and I got sort of hooked into that one summer, so I didn't go back to my education, but I always had like a sort of love for it, and I always had ideas to make for films. And then I got to like my 30s, my early 30s, and I thought, fuck, I can't sort of go through life without sort of having a go and pursuing one of those ideas. So I seen the Can House, which was a house in Hartlepool. I had 75,000 empty cans of lager on it. And I just thought that would be a great idea for a short documentary. And then it turned out that it had like loads of it was like a hive for like loads of social issues as well, and I was a massive fan of Richard Billingham and stuff, and when I went and filmed around there, it was very much like raise a laugh and stuff, and I just felt I'd found my little thing, so I pursued that, and then which led on to other projects.
Do you think that's influenced the films that you've made since then? The kind of the documentary style and the kind of social commentary.
Yeah, what do you say? What did you say at the beginning there? So,
I think that's it. Like, kind of influenced the films you've made since that first Can House movie.
Oh, the Can House. Well, yeah. So I think so. I think there's like a sort of political and sort of social sort of look that I have when I make things, but I think it's just sort of I'm sort of more into the way that just anybody really interacts with their landscape. So I suppose Phil was he sort of interacted with the town in a very sort of weird way. I'm sort of interested in people who sort of have a really weird relationship with nature, and I always have been. I realised that I always, when I started making things like Pig the Dog and stuff about like ferreters and people who do these like weird things, these weird traditional northern things with nature, that I'd always been interested in that sort of thing as well. So yeah.
Great. And you've mentioned about a few collaborations you've done. You mentioned like Michael Smith there. And
yeah.
Do you tend to work alone, or do you collaborate more than work in isolation?
Well, I think if I'm making the character documentaries like Ferret with Rambo, I like to spend time to get to know the characters that are in it. So Sucker is a character that often comes up in a few of my films. So I spent a lot of time with him over the years, getting to know him and sort of getting before we do shoots and stuff. And there's sort of other characters along the way, like some of the bear watchers and stuff that were in. And obviously Phil and everybody around the Can House, I just like sort of the going to the Can House became like because it was like a social club, the Can House anyway. It was like a weird sort of pub. I did find myself like sort of going around there to socialise weirdly.
But that's what
But then when I'm making stuff with Michael Smith, it's so that feels as though I am sort of alone, embedded type of thing with people. Like maybe you're like aware that a journalist would, a videographer or journalist would, a news or something. That does feel a little bit like that. But when I'm with Michael Smith, it's like we sort of, we're living the landscapes together, and there's like because Michael's writing's very psychogeographical. We're sort of experiencing the landscape together, where I'm like sort of coming up with the pictures, sometimes finding characters, and then he's sort of poetically finding poetry, like written poetry for the narration. So that's really, I probably enjoy the physical exercise of making a film when it's like that, because like, especially if we're in a town or a city and we're making them about like a town or somewhere, because we'll find the best chippy and find out all the local pubs and stuff. Well, it's best to have a pint, and it's just like real fun when I'm working with Michael, because he's a close friend, and like, so we do have a lot of, like, I do like that, yeah, and collaborating like that, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah.
Why do you think that the creative arts is important for you personally and more generally?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it, in the north, in Teesside, because we've got like such a small sector. I think it's really important to identify people who are good at it and encouraging them to do things so we can make economy out of it. So I'm sort of really interested in that, and interested in supporting that in the future and going forward. But yeah, I think it's identifying people who've got ideas and want to push them forward, and I think we can make business out of them and be like, I think that's how we grow the sector in the Teesside and Hartlepool.
So do you think lockdown has had a massive effect on kind of creative industries, but your work specifically, and maybe some of your future planning?
Yeah, well, I had one little project that I was doing for the trust that was a commercial project, really, and I managed to sort of cobble that together. But like for my practice, really, which is getting to know people and possibly putting together like I'm putting together a shoot for a short drama that I'm going to do with the BFI later in the summer, and really we need to be past all this for me to be able to do it. Really, I'll keep pushing the can down the road with it if there's still if we're having to go into a bubble to do the shoot and stuff. I don't think it'll really like support, like I don't think it can really support the free flowing way that I'd like to work. Like being like improvising and being spontaneous doesn't really go with like with the way we want to shoot really the project. So I don't think that'll work out. But being able to like, you know, I've done a couple of things where I could do like I could go out and shoot on my own and shoot sense of place and stuff like that and make films like that. That hasn't been too bad, but to collaborate on maybe a set where you want to work with other talent and actors and things, it's for me, I don't think it can work, but so hopefully I can do that later in the summer.
Yeah. I think you as well, like people just feel comfortable around you. That's how you're always able to capture such characters, because then you make them feel like you're your friend. And that's not easy at the minute because of everything going on.
Exactly, I know. Well, I can't really work with me. I think I don't know, like most people probably. Most of the people I film with, like the character stuff that I've done in Hartlepool, they probably wouldn't care. but I would. It's difficult, isn't it? It's like I don't think I don't think I can do that type of style film without it being free and flowing. You know, I'd like this thing that I'm doing with the BFI, it's got a script, but it's got loads of room to improvise. So what we wanted to do is I wanted to take the actors and maybe take them into some real life situations and try and shoot like on the hop a bit. And I don't think I reckon if I have that in the script, I think, to be honest, I think the BFLI at the present minute would probably make us drop all them ideas.
Right.
So I wouldn't like, and that's really the idea of the film.
Right.
So I don't think we'd be able to do it even. But yeah. So yeah, hopefully that everything's back to normal by the mid to end of the summer, so we can do it.
Yeah. So fingers crossed for 2021 being a more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Really interesting.
Radio.
Bye.
Bye.